Good morning, it's Hank here. I wanted to cover a quick couple of things as far as explosives development, which is badly needed for the survival immersion experience. So, as many of you know, I use better locational damage as my baseline. So, this right here, we're looking at Fallout 4 edit. Most modders will know what that looks like, and I'm under the category of better explosives redo, which goes in the lower order above better locational damage. And what I'm examining right now, just to make a point, is the explosion missile shell. Okay, so you can see the difference in damage between better explosives redo and vanilla and the radius. And I've tried to modify my explosives before on my own in remote explosives, and I tried to modify the M79 and I failed and ended up crashing the game because as much as I've looked around for tutorials, there's not a whole lot of modders that really seem to want or are capable of covering all the nuances of explosions and everything else that's contained therein. So I freely admit that it's beyond my technical skill. So there's a couple of ideas that I have that I would really like to address first, because I need them really to be able to progress further as my enemies get more and more powerful. As my levels go up, I'm going to need different ways, especially with Greslin working on PA-NPC and the AI of the enemies getting better and better and more accurate, and it places a lot of demands on my ability to address a situation tactically. So because I don't wear power armor, and because I have to rely on stealth and mobility a little bit more, and even medium armor, I can't really carry that much weight. So whatever I obtain a lot of times in the field, because I can't travel back and forth to settlements, I end up staying in the field for a very, very long time. I can't carry a whole bunch of scrap or the components or any of that stuff. So I need to start kind of analyzing the weight of things and like what kind of components would be required that I could actually gather in the field and then create something useful out of it. Like, for example, the makeshift battery, the lead acid battery, is very heavy, but if you were to say carry that and you know, like a military grade circuit board, possibly a fuse, possibly you know, like maybe 6 microfusion cells and, you know, 3 pulse grenades or something to that effect. None of that stuff is, you know, with the exception of the military grade board and the weight of the battery, it actually creates a bit of incentive for me to actually carry that battery with me, and the weight of that military grade circuit board, and it would make it so I would be looking for that type of scrap. Not that we need a whole bunch of components to construct things. We just need the right ones. And I do like the idea of using scrap as a block versus just the component pieces of it. Like, you know, the battery, I think, consists of lead and acid and wood, and it might have steel or something, which doesn't really lend to like the immersion idea of actually finding one of those kind of rare batteries. And this would be the static field charge that I'm talking about right now would be kind of like the pulse grenade equivalent of the Fatman explosion, so the electrical equivalent of the remote nuke, with an extremely large blast radius, and that basically is just going to detonate robots. So when Automatron kicks in and I've got to deal with you know, pretty powerful robots spawning in, I can place this type of charge and deal with it almost just like I could take out a city block with a Fatman. You know, destroying all the synths, because they're very difficult to take out anyway, because you know, headshots don't work against them perfectly. The way that their anatomy is set up, you can hit them all over the place and they still can function with a high degree of lethality, because they're very, very perceptive, very accurate. They carry energy weapons. They use concentrated fire. They use team tactics. They're very highly aggressive, and they're very, very accurate. So it makes it extremely difficult to deal with robots and synths because of their power, because of their accuracy, because of their resistances. So you're not really going to overpower them in situations where you're you know, going to use a shotgun or armor penetrating rounds. I mean, the best you could really hope for is to hit them at distance with a 50 in very critical areas outside of their range of being able to deliver that accurate concentrated fire with their powerful energy weapons. Those Institute weapons are no joke. They're no shit. They're the real deal. So when I'm dealing like in an area kind of like, I don't know, it's pretty far to the south. It's some settlement that got hit by the Institute. I forget where. There's, you know, a few synths and stuff operating in that area. I think it's part of one of my videos that's edited together. If you look in the Fallout 4 edited episodes playlist, I think you'll see where I kind of sped up and engaged those synths, so you can kind of see how synths are more powerful and better locational damages and their resistances and weaknesses and stuff. So this static field charge, huge blast radius, destroys robots and synths. I guess the synths could probably even detonate with their, just like the robots detonate with their big explosions. Currently I have it set to about a 10% chance of a synth going down and exploding in that kind of like a self-destruct kind of mode that they go into. Like if you're attacking a not an Assaultron but a Protectron, and you destroy both of their arms, the robot goes into a self-destruct mode and will charge you and then try and explode. Well, this is the same kind of thing. When the synths go down, there's a 10% chance. And you don't want to be anywhere near it because it's going to blow you to bits. So I guess my point is I need some kind of equipment that I can trigger when I feel it's necessary to do so. So it has to be a remote explosive. Definitely based off of, let me pull this, definitely based off of Fading Signal's remote explosives, because it works. They detonate when they're supposed to. They just work. It's much more clean. Fading Signal's version of remote explosives is much more clean than the grenade expansion pack remote explosives. Let's see where he says remotes in here. Disguise, chem, repellents, grenade Launcher explosives list. Remote charges. So his chart. This is why I can't add this mod and fading signals, because there's overlap in these remote charges, and these remote charges don't have that same level of detail and functionality. It's just such a clean mod. It works. Now I do have issue a little bit with weights and components that are required to construct the things. Like, for example, let me actually go to where we can look at it. Actually, I don't have the mod loaded into Fallout 4 Edit right at the moment, but I just happen to know, because I've used these pretty extensively before, that the like C4 weighs 2 pounds. Well, 2 pounds of C4 is friggin' gonna rock the world. So I think C4 could be reduced to about half a pound, and then get the damages. Like, all these are very, very good. Kind of bring down the component costs. Like, I would think for a C4 plastic explosive, we could find some kind of chemical combinations, like a Abraxo cleaner or something like that. I haven't gone through the scrap, but some kind of fuse, something simple, duct tape, just not a whole lot of components to craft, so I can get them together in the field and use them. About a half a pound instead of 2, because 2 pounds is a lot. So, and then this is the better locational damage, or better explosives, which pairs with better locational damage. So that's where I'm getting this from. Except mine is the upgraded version, which is better explosives redo. You don't need both, you only need this one. And you can read through how Z has changed these things, and it's just a great baseline that I want to be able to establish the other explosives that I badly need to kind of match these characteristics. So let's take another look. So let me get back to the static field charge. So, we've talked about components a little bit. The blast radius being something like that of a mini nuke. Just reducing most bugs and, I guess all the bugs to ash. And then have the ability to kind of stun super mutants and super mutant behemoths in this large electrical field. Which would not be stopped by objects or walls, and it would freeze power armor wearing troops. And then the requirements for this, as far as perks go, would be demolition expert at some point, and then I would think a certain amount of science would get it done. So the underlying skills or perks that are required to construct explosives would be chemists for anything that was poison or fire related, science for anything that was electrical or plasma or potentially even nuclear related, pure demolitions expert for anything that's just straight ballistics or explosion or oil or something real basic like a Molotov. And then nuclear science or nuclear physicist or whatever it might be for really those super level explosives. Like, I don't think you would need a nuclear physicist to be able to construct the field the remote nuke field charge. But that should be simple. It's like the mini nuke in and of itself weighs 8 pounds. The launcher weighs nearly 32. And I can't carry around a 32-pound launcher. It's 40 pounds for possibly one shot that may or may not connect. So if I can find a mini nuke in the field, I want to say, oh, all right, hell yeah. As soon as I get to a chemistry bench, I can, connect my fuses, connect my circuitry, use the duct tape, and then I'm ready to rock and roll with a remote detonated nuke. And I just need to bring the power up on that to meet Fatman explosion in Better Explosives Redo. And then I guess the force, like I say, I'm not terribly familiar with the different ways that the explosions can be modified. Down deep into the, I guess, what the Skyrim modders, like the magical effects. Those are the things that really kind of elude me and confuse me. And wasn't, I'm not entirely certain what I'm getting right, what I'm getting wrong, and why my game froze and crashed. So, let's see here. The next type of thing that I really need and let me show you some people that are, I think, on the right track with some good ideas. The Fatman radiation hazard could be a very good way to add, and this again is fading signal. Could add like a lingering radiation field effect, or it could be kind of one of those things where you could develop a dirty bomb, like so let me bring this up. So I have a dirty bomb set as a remote explosive, which would be very nice to have. So the reason that I would want this is because it creates a long-lasting, high-intensity, wall-penetrating radioactive field that would be strongest near its point of detonation and have a spherical radius. So, like the flashbang, which I haven't spoken about yet, it wouldn't cause blast damage or ignite, or it could cause just a little blast damage or ignite combustible materials, but it's basically designed like its ideal deployment would be, say I'm in the city and I'm up at the top of a building and I want to basically deny any spawning enemies or anybody in the street or an alley the ability to cross this radioactive field. So it's like I could deploy the dirty bomb on the first level of the building or in the street and then go to the top and detonate it, and it basically would create this radioactive field that if humans or animals or whatever tried to get up into the building, they'd have to pass through that radioactive field, and it would kill them, and it would give me an opportunity to be able to engage strong or extremely highly armored enemies, or I basically know that I can't be outflanked, or maybe I want to set a charge in one alley where I'm particularly concerned about being flanked, and this would allow me to move up corridors where I might suspect that I'll be taking forward fire without having to worry too much about being charged, attacked, or shot from behind. But it's still a field that I can cross if I have, a radiation suit, Radx, stuff like that. Or, say, for example, I'm being flanked all over, or I've got a bunch of melee enemies that are kind of surrounding and attacking me because they're, using those PA-NPC tactics where they are choosing different vectors in the way that they've spawned in, and they're going to surround me. So maybe I need to detonate one of those dirty bombs kind of around my center to kind of create a bubble or a shield where they can't get past a certain point before they're becoming irradiated and die. And then I basically just have to trade the protection that I would have for wearing armor in exchange for like the hazmat suit. So I would be ballistically more vulnerable, but I would also have that benefit of kind of like, you know, that radiation bubble or shield. If you watch the movie When We Were Soldiers, you can see how when the Americans called in their artillery strikes or mortar strikes, basically they used the mortar strikes as like expanding, basically like blast shields. Like you'd call it in, they call it in on a location, and the mortars drop outside, creating a blast shield. So as enemies are trying to charge in, they're getting blown apart by that expanding munitions or the mortars that are being fired from the fire base that the Americans call in. And it works kind of like as an effective shield. And that's the same kind of idea that I want to apply to the dirty bomb. Now, clearly it's not going to work against ferals. It'll actually make them stronger. So, you know, it does have its drawbacks. And I would think, you know, components could be fairly simple. You know, what do you need? Nuclear material. Nuclear material is pretty rare as it is. So you don't really, I don't think, need a whole lot of it. I find over and over and over again, a lot of times in mods, people make mods, the construction, the crafting requirements to have the materials and the perks required to craft them basically exclude you from being able to utilize these weapons for most of the game, or only be able to construct them at settlements, and then you have to lug around bags and bags of scrap. You know, I've tried to offset this a little bit with including the salvage beacons, but I still can't even use that until I get local leader perk 1. So, and then I'd have to travel all the way back to a settlement. So lower craft component requirements, so I can immediately start to construct and utilize things in the field. Kind of, you can look at it as the rarity of those particular components when you're examining balance and the strength of the weapon to be deployed, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. Now, I mentioned this, I think, in episode 8, where I think it's called Red Tourette Raider Engagements or something. Well, in the very beginning, I'm on the overpass, and down beneath I hear a Yao guy that's attacking a Brahmin. And I take 3 Molotovs and throw them, because I know at this point, lighting an animal on fire like a Yao guy, which are really tough. You watch me dump I dump a full magazine of 7.62 millimeter into the bear. It's on fire. I hit it with 3 rounds of 308 in the rump through VATS, and 1 more 308 shot connected to the body before it finally dies. So if I was in that position on the ground attacking that Yao guy at that range with 7.62, I've made the mistake of shooting it with a shotgun because I thought it would knock back, but knockback only works on medium-sized creatures or smaller. It doesn't work on large. So that Yao guy tore me to pieces that one particular day. Very important lesson I learned. But even dumping a full clip of 7.62 millimeter into an angry bear, the Yao Gai, is no guarantee that it's going to go down before it hits you. And one swipe of the claw is going to cripple you, and if you're crippled, your accuracy is going to be gone, and you might as well just give it up your fucking bear food. So what I need when I was on top of that overpass is an incendiary grenade that functions like a fragmentation grenade, where it's a timed explosive that can bounce instead of contact, like the Molotov. The Molotov immediately contacts and explodes it, and it's why I couldn't bounce anything perhaps off those trees and into that bear cave to light the bear on fire while it was on the overpass, so the bear could have come out at that point being on fire, and I could have fired shots in succession without putting myself in such risk later on in the episode. So it would be similar to the Molotov. Doesn't explode on impact, so the grenade can be bounced. Stronger fire damage, so the initial explosion will be stronger than the Molotov, and be based on how many ranks in chemist that you have. Like, one rank in demolition expert should be enough to construct the casing and the fuse, but the strength of the chemical incendiary would be based, in my opinion, off how many ranks you have in chemist. One, I think, would be the bare minimum to construct the incendiary grenade, but as you go up in chemist, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Like, the initial blast would be stronger than that of a Molotov, but it would have the same burn and burn duration, because for anything except for like a napalm or a very particular special type of fire-based grenade with its own magical effect, these are the things that are beyond my understanding and modding about how the explosion effects work. How burn damage is applied over time and stuff like that. But I would think that the incendiary would cause the same type of burn damage and fear effect as the Molotov does. But unlike the Molotov, because when the Molotov breaks, the oil goes out over the ground, so you have kind of you basically have a fire field that exists for a little time. Well, see, the incendiary wouldn't do the same thing. It would pop, it would explode, any combustible materials would immediately go on fire, but it wouldn't leave a fire field. Maybe perhaps for a second or so, just as kind of a visual thing, but as a tactical thing, I don't see the incendiary grenade working that way like the Molotov does. So, let's go back to, before I move on to the next piece, let's go back to some of the guys that have the right ideas. Fatman, radiation hazard. Fire grenade explosions enhance. I like this model of grenade. This stun grenade is important. Now, I was talking about the flashbang grenade earlier, and that's kind of this stun grenade kind of does two things. One is kind of like a flashbang effect, but I'd rather have flashbang be its own grenade, because then you could have, say, demolition expert 1, science 1 to craft it, but as your ranks in demolition expert, say, went to 2, and your science went to 2 and 3 and 4, your flashbang would get more powerful, and it would not penetrate walls, and it would deafen and blind and stun your enemies. Now, I really enjoyed it Let's see if I can find it here. I really enjoyed the flashbang from... See if I can find it. Really enjoyed the flashbang from the grenade expansion pack. It did penetrate walls, so you had to be really careful when you used it. There's an episode where I used it. I think it's called Back Alley Apparel Hostage Rescue or something like that, where you can see the flashbang work, and I really, really enjoy it. Because there are instances where you want to clear a room, or let me give you the best example I can think of right away. On the upper floor of Corvega plant, where the boss is, there's a bunch of cars that can explode. Or there's a parking lot that's to the east of Diamond City. So if you come out of Diamond City and you start heading towards the waterfront, towards the Brotherhood of Steel base, there's going to be a big parking lot full of cars that can explode. There's a couple of dogs there. And possibly with PA-NPC, raiders could be spawning in that area, or any other kind of enemy or troop. But it's a raider-controlled area, so the likelihood that it would be a raider is likely that I could have additional enemies dealing with in that area. Well, I don't want to throw a frag in there and blow the whole freaking thing sky high and kill myself. It would be very beneficial to be able to throw that flashbang into the parking lot or into that upper area of Corvega and basically turn away from the flash or be behind the wall and stun those enemies, and then I can come out and engage them with a shotgun, or I can engage them with my assault rifle or whatever, go for headshots while they're stunned and put them all down before they have a chance to return fire. Or even those, another example where this would be a really good use of the flashbangs is that Sargus Ironworks. Because when you go up there the forged, the raiders up there have a tendency to wear this like caged metal armor with the comes with its own helmet and everything, and they're bullet resistant. They're strong fuckers. So even fragging them or firing, using fire and stuff against them is not very effective, because that's their whole, ballywick. I guess it's their whole theme up there, is their fire and, heavy armors, heavy forged armors that they wear. So to be able to flashbang them, it would give me an opportunity to be able to concentrate fire on whatever area in their body would be vulnerable and that I think that I could hit while they were disoriented. So that's just the flashbang. Now let me go back here to the stun grenade, because let's see. Enhance, where in the heck was it? Stun grenade, where are you? Enhance. There it is. Okay. Now the advanced stun grenade is the right idea too, because it's going to kind of freeze. It locks up the from what I had read before, and I'm not sure that I see it here, but basically it locks up power armor. So to be able to stun, basically to have a grenade that shuts down power armor or freezes their joints for a little bit would be extremely helpful. Alright, now let's see, the M79. This is what I really need, and I talk about it pretty extensively in and this was the one that I was trying to get the explosion patched and everything, with a VIS-G tag, craftable at the weapons workbench with ammo that can be crafted at the chemistry station. Like, I don't like to include keywords that make you have to have a explosion or a explosives workbench, because anytime I find a chemistry workbench in the field, I want to be able to use it to craft ammo and grenades and remote explosives. But this is definitely by far my favorite grenade launcher. I love its function, I love its simplicity, but all the other kind of stuff can be taken out. If it just fired one simple 40mm grenade with no ammo switching or any of that stuff, I would be more than pleased. I don't need it to switch ammo. I don't need all these bizarre extra rounds. I just need a 40mm grenade that works and that can be delivered over distance. And you can see why I would call for that in a video. I think it's in one of the lost episodes, Arbitration 20 versus 1. You see where I used the 40mm grenade launcher in an era before better locational damage existed. And before PA-NPC existed. It's arbitration based. So it's called Arbitration 20 versus 1. And then if you wanted to see where I would need to apply this weapon with the right statistics and blast radius and all that stuff, that would be found in Season 5 Red Turret Raider Engagement. Alright, I know I'm getting a little long with this, but let me just cover two more things, and I'll get to play testing. All right, now just a couple of things to think about, and I can go into detail. I'm trying to write an article on it, but I figured it would be a little bit easier just to kind of discuss, what I was thinking, what my need is, because I mean, I have a need for these explosives, because shit is gonna get fucking bananas when I get into the city, and I need some shit to work with. Frankly, I do. All right. A fuel bomb, which is a remote explosives that's going to create the fire field. Pretty kind of simple idea. It would be a remote explosive. A concussion explosive. So it's basically like, it doesn't deliver a lot of damage. It's basically like a fragmentation charge that just doesn't have any frag. So it could be developed as a remote explosive or as a thrown timed or even impact grenade. That's basically going to blow objects and enemies away from that point of radius. And the reason that I would use this type of equipment is because if you shoot the legendary raider, the legendary gunner, typically he's going to have this fucking badass weapon that's going to chew you to pieces, and his battle buddies run over, pick that up, and fuck you up with it. So to deny them access to that equipment, or even be able to knock them down, blast them back, knock the equipment away from them, just without having to deal with a whole lot of blast damage or blast effects. Knocking synths down, because it's like a synth is kind of like resistant to fragmentation grenades and stuff. So maybe the concussion grenade, to be able to knock them off their feet, medium-sized creatures and smaller, be able to kind of blast them back, blast equipment back without fire or radiation or some kind of ancillary effect, kind of like a multi-purpose tactical grenade that I can use for those types of things. So it's it's not, because it does have you know, kind of like a multi-purpose use and effective against, you know, most creatures standing on 2 feet. Probably not super mutants so much, I wouldn't think, because but it would blast their the guns and shit that they would go after, because the fuckers run over and pick up a minigun and light your ass up with it too. So to blow those types of things away from their reach, that's where it would be used against super mutants. So you know, it could be in remote form, or it could be in timed, or say even I've got another, like one of those parking lot types of situations. It's kind of, you find one that's near the water line outside of Quincy. As you're kind of moving under the underpass, there's, you know, usually some death claws or something will come out, and then you've got the gunners that have overtaken Quincy. So to be able to move into that parking lot, there's like a subway, a derailed subway train that goes up the hill and gives you an infiltration point if you're going to try and sneak into the gunner complex. But what would be nice would be able to have a remote concussion charge there in that parking lot, so I could, if I had to run out of that subway, kind of with a derailed subway train, which is kind of like a tunnel of cover, basically, to run back across that and back across the parking lot and out, I could detonate that and it would blow the cars over, but maybe not up. Or as the gunners came across, or whatever was giving chase, it would knock them off their feet or in a different direction without detonating the parking lot, which I might want to use later to actually explode it. Or maybe if I'm just running with them following me, I don't want to have that chance of catching the blast from the cars detonating behind me by placing like a standard IED or a mine or something of that nature. So you know, that's just the reason why, and the point of the concussion remote explosives, the time thrown or the contact grenades, why that would be important. And then I was thinking like a remote artillery shell, which would give you like the highest power conventional blast. You could just basically wire up an artillery shell, and it would be the most powerful conventional explosive that you could have. And then one last, just to finish up conversation on explosives today. Let's see here. I was thinking like for a super powered explosion, where if you did get to an ultra high level and you were you know, you did have nuclear science or nuclear physicists, to be able to take, and we'll discuss the rocket launchers later, because that's a whole nother thing. The grenade launcher and the remote explosives is what I need right away. But the Yangtze nuke launcher delivers a hell of an explosion. And I was thinking, well, if you had nuke psi, you know, and you're like really high level, and you have Demo 4 and whatever else, that you could maybe create a mini nuke that or a nuclear remote charge that was as powerful as this blast. So if you were, you know, I talk about sneaking into a complex in the Red Tourette Raider Engagements episode, to be able to place, you know, a mini nuke in the center and create a huge blast. And this would just be a bigger blast, kind of a novelty, but, you know, just to kind of have a payoff for reaching a super high level of perk and everything when it comes to explosives construction. So, you know, everybody loves big booms, and I want to incorporate more of that into the survival immersion series, because explosions are fun, explosions are exciting, so, and they're very valuable. I mean, what's the saying? There are very few situations that can't be resolved with the application of high explosives. So giving a little more focus to this type of mod. I'm begging for it because I screwed it up last time and it was just so friggin' painful to go through, and I'm just not that skilled a modder. You know, I'll play test and everything, try and give you guys the best data that I can. And let me go ahead and get to that. It's been Hank. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.